Hello and welcome to our very first live development stream. So let's just see how this goes. What we essentially have here is this triplanar mixer, which has 6 different inputs, two for every axis, for the positive and the negative direction. It has a blend value, and it can be applied in world or in local space. So I've got basically my block here that defines how whatever's happening down here is being blended onto the background. Then we're going to have the settings that affect the triplanar mapping in general, with the mode switches down here defining what else is going to be visible further down here, or how these 3 tabs are going to be treated. So the general idea is to have a top to bottom user interface where you have the most important controls at the top, except for the compositing, but I suppose it kind of makes more sense when it's right up there.
You have to deliver on the first.
Well, the first week, and then...
I'm sorry.
Test, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, there's Oliver, okay. There's a microphone that's working.
Interrupt you.
No, it's okay. There's a few things that's going to be added. One is that we're going to have a load option here as well, because that doesn't exist yet. Then all the mip-map options that the native image nodes have is going to be added as well, which already exists internally in the code. There's just no user interface. I still have to fix this bug, which 2018 seems to have, that it cuts off panels once they're outside of the node editor, or at least if they're mildly complicated like this one. Welcome to our second live stream, our second development live stream. And the plugin of the month this month is the multi-image sampler node, which we've essentially completed. This is what it looks like. What you have at the top here are the normal compositing settings. Below that you have an index that allows you to pick any of these images for texturing. I have a spherical projection that goes into the image sampler, and I'm using the instance info fixed random, which is basically a random number between 0 and 1, which is different for every instance, and I'm using that as the index. So if I go into the multi-image sampler again, just move this away, and just load a bunch of images, like so. You will see that now each of those bunnies has a different texture map assigned to it. And yeah, well done. This is our first crash. It's actually the first one since the beginning of the week, which I think is good. Oh, and because this is actually a development stream, here's some code. The interesting thing about this one was that it was mainly just getting that list to work properly. Everything else was fairly trivial. We'll call it a night then. So, thank you very much for joining. All right, we are on air. So, welcome to our Q&A live stream for December 2018. I probably won't have much to show or to talk about. We did fix the last bug in the multi-image sampler, and that has actually been sent out to patrons 2 or 3 days ago.
So, Merry Christmas to all of you, and a great and funny New Year.
Wow. Take care, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Bye-bye. Well, I was going to show the current state, or the initial state of the logic nodes that everybody has voted for. And then you have a selection of comparison operations. Check if they're equal. If they're not equal, is if one is greater or equal than another, or if it's just greater, smaller or equal, or just smaller. So for example, if I want to switch between 2 colors, what you would do is take the color output from one thing that you want to switch to, attach it to new, and you will see that this automatically creates a color true, color false input and a color output. You don't have to have a switcher for every combination of values that you want. You can just hook multiple things up to it, and it just adds new inputs and new outputs. And an additional tool that you're going to have is just the Boolean logic. Oh, Acrobat Reader, why are you so silly? Oh, LG, you're the first one whose chat message has actually been held back by YouTube for review. That has never happened before. Once these are in an actual state where they actually do something and don't just look like they do something, I'm going to send out a first beta to all patrons. So thanks, good night, and bye-bye, see you guys. Welcome to our Q&A live stream for January 2019. You will notice that all of a sudden the pass-through and the Boolean operator and the invert output are activated. Off, on. One thing that was a direct result of what we talked about a week ago on the development live stream is the array type comparison. Thanks to Hans for joining, thanks to everybody who is watching for watching, and thanks to everybody who will be watching the recording later for watching. And there is Oliver.
Sorry.
I was just about to say goodbye.
You can say goodbye.
Well, hello and welcome to our development live stream for February 2019. And yeah, this is one of the first test renders. The rotation, this might actually change a little bit, but you can randomize the rotation. So let's see if I, for example, take the pixel x coordinate as a random seed. This is what you get. This is how you generate noise with a really weird pattern in Lightwave. Warm and fuzzy. Alright, I think now it's time to end the stream. So on that note, thanks a lot. Good night to all of you. Bye bye. One thing I added today is in the image viewer here, you actually have a grid in the background, or checkers, if there's transparency. And you can also change the probability, the variation, and the scale. And I think in this case, I have an envelope on them. Yes, I do. So let me just, actually, you can just leave it as is. So it's actually animated from 0 to 100, which allows you to, like if you have a probability of 50%, then only half of those images are actually going to be shown. And you can animate it, so you can even, animate more and more of these decals being added as time progresses, or remove them. So basically, the main difference is you can see it here, the rotations all of a sudden aren't that much different from one to the next. Or the selection of images isn't that much different from one to the next. So you do have some kind of clustering, certainly.
It's interesting.
Let me just make it, that's 0.1, and this is 0.01.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, I don't know if it would be ever useful.
That is actually a good idea, that random, basically what would be nice is if there was an output that didn't actually contain any of the images,
yeah,
but just a pseudo random value for every tile, so you can differentiate it from another one.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, if you just look at the
like almost like using like a fake object ID type of thing.
Like a fake object ID. I mean, if you look at just the brightness of this, for example.
Yep.
But sometimes just chatting it makes you think of things, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's one reason why we're doing this stream.
Yeah.
Is because you certainly you bounce ideas much easier by talking about them than by typing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it generally works the way it should. Louis today asked if those handles could be even bigger.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I suppose they could be. That's not an issue. And the main thing that is missing is basically a way that if you drop the tool and then reactivate it to get the last setting back. I think we'll just call it a night then.
Sounds good to me.
Yep, and anything else, any further development will be on the Discord channel anyhow. We'll be showing some sneaks, and yeah, there's a couple of days left until the end of the week to get this done for the patrons, and then we'll see what's happening next week. This is our live stream for April 2019 for the multi-switcher nodes that you have voted for. And what we see here is multiple cows that have the multi-switcher applied to them. So what this allows you to do is essentially build gradients and curves in the graph editor, but evaluate them nodally using something else but the current time. I'm creating a string called name that is going to host the name of the node input. I'm going to send that to my rename function, and I'm going to say, okay, if this rename function returns true, then we're actually going to rename the node input, which is nen. I think there's a rename function there. There we go. Rename name. A bit of boilerplate code because this is mixture of C and C++. So this should actually do it. All right, right click on this one, rename. The input is called material 6. Let's call it not my material. Does it update? Yes, it does. All right, yeah, renaming works. Well, thanks for supporting us. It's been great fun. It's a nice ride. I mean, we're really enjoying this, especially the interaction with all of you guys. The fun on Discord, and yeah, it's we wanted to try out something different, and it's great. We're loving it. So thanks to all of you. And yeah, I think it's time to end the stream. So have a nice weekend, and we hope to see as many of you as possible next Friday. Bye-bye. But yeah, that's like the freebie bonus plugin for 6 months of db&w on Patreon. What are your guys' experiences with the whole Patreon?
I'm absolutely fine with it. I think it's been really good. There's been some incredibly useful plugins that have come out of it. I haven't had a lot of time to use Lightwave of late, I'm afraid, but I absolutely love what you've been doing.
Cool.
I'm a huge fan.
I think for the value, it's superb.
Well, definitely good value.
But I've got a question.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Do you think it was beneficial going down the Patreon route?
Yeah.
I think it was a wise choice.
Yeah, absolutely. We just also gained so much experience because, you know, it's something. It allows us to work in a way that's different from what we did before, where it's just, you know, you're a developer and you might be reachable. You know, if people know you, or maybe via Facebook, you get messages and things like this. This is just much closer relationship with the people actually using the plugins and the stuff. Mm. And we've also, for a long time, have been in favor of being, you know, a bit more transparent in how we develop, what we develop, because we think it's beneficial for us as well as for the users.
So, here we go for tonight.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us.
No worries.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll hopefully see and hear you again next month.
Yep.
I'll try.
And again, thank you guys.
As well as online.
you.
Bye bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.